When I was 3, my grandfather passed away. I don't really remember him, like at all. I know exactly what he looks, though, as my grandma still has pictures of him all around her house, and I've seen the home videos of him and myself, and my younger sister when she came along. Of him playing with us, and him lighting my candle at my first birthday, that sort of thing. There is an exception, though. For years, I've had this random memory that must have occurred only a few months or so before his passing, because I'm pretty sure in this memory I was 3, or very close to it, and my sister was around a year old. I have this very vivid memory of myself sitting at a kitchen bench, and my sister in her high chair, and my granddad playing pop-up behind the kitchen bench. Like he would duck down behind the bench and doing a big pop-up surprise, making a different funny face each time. I was laughing, and my baby sister was doing the typical baby big laughing. It's nothing special in what happened or what went down, but yet it's so strong and vivid. Now, despite how vivid and strong that memory is, I was never sure if it actually happened. Like I said, I was only 3. I barely remember my granddad, and apart from that memory, the only things I really know about him are stories from my mom and grandma, and from the home videos. I could totally be making it up, which is very possible given what we know about memories from young childhood fading or being twisted in the sense that we misremember or even have completely false memories. Flash forward to last year when I was pregnant with my first, and my friend group were talking about my family and what do they think baby will look like, etc. I talked about my granddad, how I barely remember him, but I have this one memory. It goes like this, but I'm not sure if it's really real, etc., blah, blah, blah. That night, after catching up with my friends, I had an incredibly vivid dream. In this dream, the memory was being reenacted. I was watching my granddad pop up and down behind the counter, making funny faces and making me and my sister laugh as I remember. But after the 5th or 6th time of him doing it, he pops up but becomes serious and looks directly at me. He tells me that yes, this really did happen. He loved playing this game with us girls. He is happy I remember this, and don't worry, I'm not making a false memory. Everything is all good. I'm not superstitious. While I'm open to the idea of ghosts and the supernatural, there is still a large part of me that is very skeptical. And a part of me does think that dream was just a figment of my subconscious's imagination. But I also do think my granddad came to me in that dream that night to reassure me and confirm that memory was real. I believe, to this day, that the vast majority of, not all, paranormal videos and photos have a plausible explanation outside of the paranormal. This means that these videos and photos can be easily explained away as either CG, poor quality cameras, pareidolia, or as outright fakes. Needless to say, I do believe that there still can be paranormal shit that happens. However, at the time when this happened, about 8 years ago, and when I didn't believe in ghosts as much, my family and I were staying at the Fort Garry Hotel in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I had a few spare moments and decided to explore the hotel because it is absolutely beautiful. I got lost, as I usually do in buildings, since I get directionally challenged the moment I step into one. Anyways, I happened to run into someone that looked like they worked for the hotel, but weren't house cleaning or a clerk, so I was unsure of their position or job. I asked for directions back to the lobby, since I had to meet my family in a few minutes. The moment I arrived in the lobby and walked past the front desk, a clerk and a security guard were staring at me in shock and pale faces. The security guard asked me who I was talking with earlier for the directions back to the lobby. I told him I thought it was someone who worked at the hotel. Well, wouldn't you know, It turns out that floor I was on. I can't remember it for the life of me. Has a bunch of paranormal shit that goes on regularly. I don't know if he was supposed to, but the security guard showed me the footage he had just seen. The person I was talking with never appeared on the security feed, even though they should have been, in plain view. It was super creepy, because I had shaken this person's hand for some reason, and the footage just showed me shaking hands with the air. The person appeared in front of me, as any other person would have. When I touched their hand, it felt like any squishy person would normally, and yet they never showed up on the footage. There was no way I could have blocked out the person from view of the camera either, as I'm only 5'6". The security guard even pulled up a second angle for further proof. No one else believes me despite the footage. To this day, I still don't know how to explain it. My grandmother passed away 3 years ago after a long fight with cancer about a month before my wedding. I saw her the day before she passed, but due to work, I wasn't at the hospital the day of and was pretty upset about it. After her funeral, I dreamt I was at my parents' house. But in the dream, it was my friend's house. He was saying to me how there are lots of ghosts in the house, and at that point, there's a knock at the door. There's a lead light window by the door, and I see an outline of a small lady in a purple wool coat, something my grandmother wore before she was admitted to hospital. I walk to the door and open it to see her standing there. I ask her how she is as I unlock the door, and then I wake up. At this point, I'm completely shaken. I get up to get some water and just process what I dreamt. After about 20 minutes, I go back to bed and eventually, after about an hour, fall asleep and begin dreaming from the exact point before I wake up, where I unlock the door and see her standing there, holding a plate of my favorite food that she would always make whenever I or she visited. I hug her and ask her how she is, and she says she's fine and not to be sad because everything is going to be okay. I tell her that I love her and miss her, give her one last hug, and then I wake up. At that point, I feel happy, but when I try to tell my wife what I dreamed, I completely break down, mostly at the fact that even my dream she brought me a plate of my favorite food. It's hard to explain, but the dream felt extremely real. At the point where I saw and spoke to her, prior to that, when speaking to my friend, it felt like a normal dream. If she did visit me, I'm so glad I got one last chance to say goodbye. I have had dreams of friends and family that passed, but I've had one visitation dream. My grandparents had a joint funeral. My grandmother died during heart surgery, and 3 days later, my grandfather died in his sleep while taking a nap like the saint he was. I dreamt of them in the garden. My grandmother was sitting in a chair, and Grandpop was behind her with his hand on her shoulder. The reason I think it was them visiting is because there was such love flowing out of them that you could almost see it. There was sunbeams look in the early morning. It was just so strong and warm and comforting. The feeling was palpable, like I could fill up a jar with it to keep. The love and energy flowing out of them towards me was like no other dream I've ever had. They didn't say anything, but honestly, they didn't have to. I knew what the message was. I used to rent a townhouse in the woods with my ex. One night I'm out on duty when she calls me at about 3 a.m, absolutely hysterical. I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody broke in, I gotta race home and help. But it seems the wooden baby gate we used to keep the puppy downstairs flew from the base of the stairs all the way up the stairs, hit the ceiling, leaving a mark, and landed in a mangled mess. The puppy was locked in her cage all night, so she couldn't have done it, and all the doors and windows were locked from the inside. Later that month, we were in the kitchen having a chat when, in front of our very eyes, this big heavy feeder we used for the cat, which was on the countertop as I just cleaned it, rotated 90 degrees upright onto its side, and then gently another 90 so as to be upside down. It barely made a tap as it landed. This feeder was heavy. When I tried to recreate this, it made a very loud crash. How could it rotate with only a tap? More crazy things happened too. I would enter the kitchen, and then the silverware drawer would bang super loud. The animals would stare at a corner of the room and back away slowly. A dead-bolted door would be wide open as soon as you turned your back to it. Oh, and the nightmares. Man, you would not believe. So, not saying I believe in ghosts, but damn, bud. When I was in college, I lived in an apartment complex. Every once in a while, at like 2 in the morning, I would hear breaking glass. It was clear as day when it happened. There was no doubt it was a window breaking. Never found any broken glass anywhere around the apartment. My younger brother would come out and party with us, and once or twice he came busting into my room, thinking someone was breaking in. Finally, one night, my girlfriend stayed over. She would kick and push in her sleep and at some point nudged me and I woke up. When I looked over at her, she wasn't asleep. She was sitting at the foot of the bed, facing away from me. When I said her name, she stood up and walked out of the room. Glass break. I looked around and realized that she was still laying next to me in bed. That was the only time I saw anything in that place, but heard the sounds pretty consistently. When I was in college, I lived in these really old dorms. Like, hadn't been renovated in over 70 years, and the thermostat looked like the first version of one. We each had our own key card to the place. This is important for later. The doors automatically lock behind you the moment they shut. The bedroom is designed in that cabinets line close to the ceiling of each bedroom. There's also a mirror and a dresser space. Anyways, winter break came around, and I decided to stay back while both of my roommates went home. It was just me and my dog for the next week or so. Both of my roommates went home to other states, so I knew there was no way they would be home at any point earlier than they said they would be. A couple of days into me being alone, I was taking a shower with the bathroom door open. I heard what sounded like a door slam in our dorm room. I peeked my head out the curtain and called out hello and called my roommates' names. No one answered. I kind of shrugged it off. A couple of nights later, I was getting ready for bed, when again I heard a loud slam from one of my roommates' rooms. I froze and my dog started going ballistic, and she hid under the bed. Mind you, my dog had never hid before, and she weighed over 60 pounds. I called out again, and even texted my roommate to ask if she had come home. She said she hadn't. Her bedroom door was locked, so I couldn't get in there. I assumed it must have been housing maintenance doing something somewhere in the building. Now that I think back at 9 p.m. at night, honestly doesn't make sense, but I wasn't worried about it still. I kind of forgot about the situation until a week later. My roommate came into my room, face pale. She asked if I had been in her room. I said there was no way and asked why. She told me to come look. My roommate had fairy lights strung up in her room she never turned off. They had been cut, both in the middle and were hanging. And the 2 cabinet doors had fallen off, which was the slam I must have heard that night. They lay on the floor. However, the oddest part was they were stacked one on top of the other, and not underneath the cabinet that was missing them, but to the right of it. It was honestly the most bizarre thing I had ever seen. We asked housing if anyone had been in our apartment during that time frame, and they said no. Ever since that point, I had other weird experiences in that dorm from time to time. My dog got spooked every now and then after that incident during winter break, and I was happy to leave when the time came.